All right, thanks everybody for joining us today. My name is Daryl, and I am the Marketing and Customer Experience Specialist for WiseCon. Today we're going to go over a little bit of a presentation with a company we work with called Phytech. We integrate with their API. Kind of what that does is bridges the gap between an irrigation recommendation versus the execution. So we're going to kind of show you a little bit about that today. And we have one of their representatives here today, Joseph. You there with us?
Yes, right here.
All right. Joseph, you could go ahead and explain your title a little bit, what you're doing for Phytech day-to-day operations.
Yeah, absolutely. So I am a customer success manager. So I'm one of the people at Phytech tasked really with working one-on-one with the growers, helping them maximize the system and fully utilize it to be able to help their orchards reach their full potential.
Perfect. All right. So as of right now, I guess I'll go ahead and I'll get started with WiseCon side of things, give a little background on our company and kind of further that introduction into how our APIs integrate and how we kind of work together. All right. Able to see my screen? All good to go. If you guys have any problems with seeing my screen or hearing me, there is a Q&A box right at the bottom of your screens. You can click that. Throughout the presentation, if you want to send in questions, you can. That's no problem. Send them in, or if there's a problem with my microphone or my camera, go ahead and let me know. All right. So here's a little presentation about WiseCon and our software and hardware drop control. So we were founded in 2006 in Chile. We're a Chilean-based company, but we came over to the United States in 2015 and settled down in Fresno, California. Since our founding in 2006, we have over 8,000 nodes deployed across 200,000 acres. In California, or in the United States alone, we have over 20 distributors, 15 of those being in California, which, heart of agriculture is where a lot of different varieties of crops are being grown and different commodities being sold and grown. So we're here. We have a very large presence ever since we moved here with about 1,000 different users in 5 different countries. So that's Argentina, Peru, Mexico, Chile, and the United States. We have both a support and shipping, receiving warehouse in Fresno as well as Chile. And like I'm going to talk about today, we have an open API. So you can see Phytech there in the parentheses. We work with a lot of different companies on these integrations just to kind of make it a one-stop and shop package for the grower. So drop control is a reliable irrigation monitoring and control system. So from looking at sensors in the field to actuating irrigations based on recommendations. So we can do stuff like starting and stopping a pump, monitoring energy levels, monitoring pressure at the filter station. We do stuff like wireless valve control. So solenoid valves in the field, we can control those and have you open them sequentially, per variety, all those different types of irrigation strategies. We also look at weather stations in the field. I can pull in data and send them across using different APIs, or throw them onto the platform so the growers can use that ET data as well as rainfall. We also do soil moisture sensors, so we can read different soil moisture probes. We can tie into any open protocol sensor that you have in the market. We work a lot with Centech, but like I said, any open protocol sensor we can tie into and read the data. We also do a lot of remote irrigation, so that's pretty much our bread and butter. Is from your desktop, from the iPad, from your iPhone, you can go ahead and schedule your irrigations. We're comprised of a hardware and a software. So the hardware side, we have our C1, X1, and our M1. The M1 is just a simple data logger. We made it as a competitive market price, competing with other data loggers that can kind of monitor, soil moisture probes, do the basics of weather stations, pressure switches. Then we have our C1, which is the fertilizer controlling node. So at the first station, it can control multiple sets of pumps over 10 different valve sets. Any pretty much open diaphragm fertilizer pump we can take control of. And then previously we have our X1, which is our flagship node. That's a monitoring and control. So pumps, soil moisture probes, weather stations, valves, they can all be controlled and monitored from the X1. Software. So through the cloud, using your laptop, your iPad, your phone, you can send irrigation commands into the Wisecon platform, which is called Drop Control. You can see that in the upper right-hand corner, our online irrigation management system, where it goes to our gateway unit, which is a cellular unit in the field that sends out the commands to other nodes in the field. So it can send a command with preloaded information. So if you have an irrigation coming on at noon, set it at 8 o'clock, you set it and leave it. Whether you lose cell signal or not, it's going to open up when you schedule it and close when you schedule it. Those nodes are also collecting data in the field from probes, and they're sending it right back to the gateway, sending it over here to our Wisecon server, which is based in Amazon Web Services, very reliable server, and right back onto the Drop Control platform. Here's a little snippet of our web page, and we'll get more into the API side of things here. This is just a basic layout of our node map. In the field, growers can look at where the nodes are placed, or our dealers can also look at where the nodes are placed. They have a kind of a description of who's managing the farm, what kind of crops they are, what's the total acreage on this farm that we're monitoring, as well as the node locations. So they can go in, click a link to the Google Maps GPS, and it has a dropped pin of where that node exactly is in the field. Kind of helps with the larger acre operations. Easy to schedule platform. So, by duration, you can just come in and say, I want to put on a 12-hour shot of water. You can go ahead and do that. Date and time, which is pretty specific. I mean, if you wanted to open at 10:23, close at 11:45, you can go ahead and do that as well. You can choose different calendar dates. Makes it easier if you're going to run 24-hour, 48-hour irrigations. And if you have a correct flow meter reading as well as acreage reading in Drop Control, then we are automatically calculating how many inches you're going to apply. So, if it's 1,300 gallons per minute across 100 acres, it's going to give you a certain type of volume that you're going to be applying for that total irrigation. Data is usually sent from the platform or from the sensors out into the field to Drop Control. We're getting data packages every 15 minutes or so. If we were having like flow or pressure readings that we need them to be faster, we can get it down to the minute. Just depends on the type of storage we're going to have on the node. So it might need more megabytes per month. But yeah, we can get it anywhere from 15 minutes down to 1 minute. Here's another little look at the ways that we can also irrigate in Drop Control. We use templates and programs. So a template, as you can see right up here, you're looking at zones 1 through 4. This is what's going to be happening throughout the day. So throughout the day, we're going to have different executions for irrigations. The program is the entire week that it's going to be held. So this one template is going to happen for so many days, for 13 days in a row, or every other day. So we can program it to, every single day, every 1 day, every 2 days, 3 days, all the way to every other week. Here's just a daily view. So after we schedule that program, we can see right here, down below, there was an irrigation program. They're all highlighted. That's what's pre-scheduled to happen. And then what's below it is what actually happened in the field. So giving you, what you thought your flow was versus what we calculated in the field, or what you thought your pressures usually are, like PSI upstream of the filters. We can give you the reading that we're actually getting. So you can see your different flushes. You can see if there's clogged lines or if you need to kind of boost your pump. Here's our weekly view. So we were first at the daily view. Now we've got a week. You can see the next 7 days, what's going to be happening on the ranch with different events. We also have a button here. So let's say Sunday before your irrigations are going to be executing. You click this scheduled irrigation button, automatically gives you a PDF report that you can send to your irrigator, and they can kind of keep track of what's supposed to be going on and off throughout the day. Here's another weekly view, but this is from the API standpoint. So growers are usually, how that works is they're getting the API, they're getting the recommendation through a company like Phytech. And based on data analytics and AI, they're able to give accurate representations of a certain time or length that you're supposed to be irrigating based on different plant sensors like dendrometers. And it comes right here. So this is what that looks like on our end. Some key points to keep in mind about the API is that it's bi-directional. So it can go both ways. We can throw data onto someone else's platform, or we can bring data in from their sensors or their platform onto ours. How this one with this relationship is working right now is that they're getting the irrigation recommendation, and then they're throwing it onto our platform and confirming all of them. So this is what we call closing the loop with the execution. That's kind of what sets us apart with that. So closing that loop of, okay, now I've got the sensors, I've got the data, now I've got the recommendation, now it comes to execution. And now we've got the automation standpoint to confirm that execution. And this is not our first rodeo. We have 7 different API integrations. So the data and the reliability is there. Everything's good to go. We've done it with multiple companies and it's been a success. It's really been a great thing to have companies like Phytech who can give those recommendations, and we can get it all executed in the field. So with the weekly view, we have here the other API versions. So now it's confirmed. So like I said before, it was proposed. So this is just saying, this is what it's going to look like. Goes over here, and now the grower can confirm all of them. So there's usually just a little button, just says confirm. You can either have a single approval on the confirm button, or you can do a mass approval. So you can see how it would be really annoying to go and click on every single one of those little purple boxes. But we are giving you the option to mass approve them. So that's just kind of things that we've learned trial and error through the API process. Like I said before, we also get some operation feedback. So through all of those confirmed API irrigations, the bar below it is signifying, what actually happened. We can see we had a volume difference of about 7%, 8%. The scheduled flow, so you think your pump is usually running around 1,200 gallons per minute. We found that we were running at about 1,100. Not a huge difference, but it's something to recognize and something to look at, as well as we can do different pressures. So we say, it should be around 50 PSI. We could read you're actually getting up to about 60 or getting down to 40. We can even set alerts and alarms in the system that can tell you when there's problems in the field, like a pressure spike or low flow or too high of flow. We've seen the ROI with automation come between 1 and 2 years. This specific case in Madeira, he lost a well, and we were still able to increase his yield 5 to 10% with mature trees, as well as save about 30% of water. And this is done with the pulse irrigation strategy. So executing irrigations, 8 to 10 times throughout the day. Next is kind of our first project we did sort of indirectly with Phytech, where we had a management company that had about 175 acres on this one project. The resources manager had a 80-acre set that they had on one ranch versus this ranch. So 1 year he wanted to recognize, how much water am I putting on without telemetry, without automation, and then compared it to, now I have Phytech giving me the recommendation, and I want to see what the execution looks like and how easy that is. So it's an irrigation system with one pump, a VFD, 10 different valves, single line drip, fan jets, and soil moisture probes. So maybe a little hard to see, but the first leaf results he got on that 80-acre block on a separate field without any automation, without any telemetry, just irrigating offhand and off basically a manual. He applied 30 to 33 inches, saw about 28 millimeters of growth. Whereas with the automated block using Phytech and using Wisecon, saw 20 total inches applied. So a pretty significant decrease in inches applied, but to get the same exact growth. I think in the long run, or after the end of that season, we realized that he saved about an acre-foot of water per acre. And with that being 325,000 gallons approximately across 80 acres, you're looking at 25 million plus gallons, US gallons of water saved. So that's a pretty significant case study of looking at how irrigation automation and telemetry and data analytics from Phytech can really help growers save water and time. So he said he basically started to irrigate based off the soil profile and was able to use us for the execution and use Phytech for the recommendation. This is just a little snapshot of our app. So if you guys are new growers or you don't really know a lot about Wisecon, or if you have Wisecon, just a heads up that we do have a new app. We released it this last year, and it's pretty user-friendly. We've got irrigators that are about 65 and older that are just using this app to start the pump every single day. So it's available in Google Play Store as well as the App Store. It gives you, your low node locations. You can look at your soil charts on your phone. You can look at your irrigation history on your phone. You can start everything Bluetooth. You can start it remotely. And if you have any questions, please reach out to me after this webinar and we can maybe get a demo scheduled for you. All right, so that's a little bit about Wisecon and what we're doing, and showed you a snippet of the integration part of it with Phytech. And now I'm going to hand the host mode over to Joseph.
So thanks, Daryl. That was great. Really always like hearing about what you guys are doing over at Wisecon. So we're trying to pop into what we're doing at Phytech for anyone who isn't familiar with Phytech already. I wanted to start with kind of the basics of what we're providing to growers. So this real-time data management to help you really control your operation on a really fine-tuned level. We're helping to supply what we view as like a gap in knowledge. For so long, I always like to say farmers have been guessing when they're out doing their irrigation or so many management decisions. You're having to look at the ground, you're having to kind of eyeball the trees, you're having to stare around at the weather, and then you're having to make a guess on how much water you're going to apply this week, how you're going to apply it, where you're going to apply it. But we're kind of taking that guesswork out of the equation, because now you actually can see with Phytech how the trees or how the vines are actually feeling, and this data is updated every 24 hours. So you're able to really get a good idea on a consistent basis where your orchard is. Then we're also trying to be alongside you guys. That's exactly what I do at Phytech, trying to help growers utilize this system, because we understand this is a new way to think about farming, to think about irrigating and caring for your orchards. So we want to help you figure out how to make the most of it. And lastly, we tried to build a platform and a system that is really user-friendly. Just like Daryl was saying, we want to be able to have those older farmers, you want to open the app and you want to really quickly understand the situation at your orchard and then be able to make the management decisions and actions from that new knowledge. Kind of to explain exactly what we're doing, we're kind of based off the principle, as you can see from the little graphic there, of the guy sucking on the straw really tightly. I'm sure you've all done that, and you can feel the water bottle or the cup or whatever compresses as you're sucking on it. Now, this is exactly what trees are going through every single day. they are slowly losing water out of the canopy due to evaporation and transpiration. So water's leaving the canopy, and to replace that, they're pulling water up through their root system. Now, the problem is that during daylight hours, the canopy is losing more than the roots are able to supply. Just like when you're sucking really tightly on that straw, you're seeing that, feeling that contraction. The tree is experiencing the same thing. As water is being pulled up out of the canopy and pulled back in through the root system, the tree is actually contracting inward during the daylight hours. But then during the nighttime hours, we see the reverse. During that period of time, the tree begins to grow. And not only does it normally make up the contraction that it experienced during the day, but it will make up more than the contraction, especially a young tree, because that's normally the growth number that you're seeing. That fundamental movement of the tree every day is exactly what is powering Phytech's system to give you that data. Now, to kind of understand what are we actually doing to figure this out, since we now know the tree contracts and expands. First, what we'll do is we'll do a satellite analysis of your fields, like you can see here, to determine what we find to be an average or representative location inside that field. And then we'll place what you see as those little green dots. That's the location of our Phytech site in the field where we have the monitoring equipment. The monitoring equipment consists of a few different things. First, we have the data logger. It's a cellular modem. This is actually the kind of collection point. So however many sensors we have inside the field, it will collect them all and then send them out to the cloud. The actual things, though, attached to the trees or the ground and stuff like this starts here with what I believe is probably the most important and most foundational sensor we have to offer here at Phytech. This is the Dendrometer, the plant growth sensor. Now, these are installed on the trunks of the trees, and they're the ones that are measuring the contraction the tree is experiencing during the day and then the expansion the tree experiences each night. And they're tracking it down to the very, very small distance of 3 microns. And kind of get an understanding, that's about 1/100th the width of a human hair. So they're measuring this contraction and expansion on a very, very small, very targeted scale to really get to see exactly what that tree is growing through. We also offer soil moisture probes for you to be able to see where that water is exactly going in your profile. And then irrigation sensing devices to be able to see exactly when you turned on the pumps, when you turned off the pumps, how much water was applied. And now in actually the most recent generation of this sensor, it also measures the PSI. And what's really neat about this is since this system is placed out in your field, that's measuring actually your in-field PSI. So this is a number that's very, very critical because I know so many growers are often measuring from the pump, but this sensor is able to provide you that information from the field. Now, the last sensor that's a part of this suite, only for commodities that actually are have vegetative fruit that we can measure. So stone fruit, citrus, avocados. We also offer a fruit sensor. This is the device placed onto the fruit itself that then measures it as it's going throughout its life cycle. We'll install it about the time when the fruit is the size of a golf ball, roughly, and then measure it throughout the rest of the growing season. So you can also target your irrigation decisions, not just on the data you're receiving from the plant growth sensor, but also the data you're receiving from that fruit sensor. Now, to kind of give you an idea of what exactly we're providing and we're reporting, here is data that we collected from the field, 3 different trees, the same block. Now, you can see each of the trees experiencing kind of a downward dive and then an upward climb each day. Now, the first thing that comes from this that's really important to us at Phytech is this growth number. As you can kind of see, we measure this growth number, I like to say, from peak to peak. What was the best value of yesterday versus the best value of today? The difference between those numbers is how much the tree grew. You can see early in the season on the left side of the screen, the tree was growing consistently every day. Whereas as it moves into the later part of the season, due to things like crop load, higher temperatures, that growth begins to flatten out. The second number that's really important to us in Phytech is this shrinkage number. That is the contraction value of as the tree is going in each day during the daylight hours, is experiencing this shrinkage. And we measure that as what was the best value of today versus the lowest value of today. I like to say from the peak to the valley. What's the difference between those two? And that gives us the maximum daily shrinkage. Now, the color that tells you where this tree is in terms of stress is produced by looking at these two different numbers, and not just individually, but also looking at the trends, the averages. The computer that's producing this is crunching a lot of different numbers to help produce this plant status color, where you see over on the far right, we have no stress to low stress, mild stress, high stress. And this easy color-coded system then is what the grower has to be able to look at to understand what's going on in his field. So how does that actually show up on our platform? You can log in, and this is kind of an idea of what you would see when you would open up the Phytech website. Very quickly, at a glance, you can see exactly where problem blocks are and where blocks are that you don't need to really worry about. This grower has a few in green, they're fine. He has one in yellow, that's okay, but then he has 3 in red. With this sort of situation, it makes it really easy for the grower to immediately know, where am I starting my day? Where am I going to first go and check on things? Which fields am I going to walk? This gives him the ability to know, or he might already know the situation there and want to get water started, or whatever his decision may be. This gives him the ability to really know what's going on in that field. All the data that we collected from those different sensors, we combine all together on this little overview page. Once you actually click on one of those individual blocks, this is what will then show up. On this page, we first have the plant status, that little color-coded system I was talking about. If you notice, there's little bars going throughout each week. You get a plant status color every single day. The system updates every 24 hours. So you're really able to get very quickly returning real-time data on how the crop is feeling, where it experiences high temperatures. As you can see over here on the left, there was a period there where the temperature rose quite a bit, as you can see from the climate data there at the bottom, and the tree, due to a lack of irrigation, went into high stress. But then, as the weather cooled back down, the tree's stress level reduced. But over here, likely not due to weather. This was a situation either due to crop load or lack of adequate irrigation that the tree began to enter stress. You also have your irrigation events reporting here. Each of those little blue bars you see throughout is an irrigation event. And going into the Phytech system, you can click on those and you can see how long your irrigation event was, how much water that irrigation event applied, as well as the average PSI of the whole irrigation run. As I already talked about, you got climate data right there. You could put your cursor over this inside the website and you'd actually be able to see exactly what the temperature was and also what the ET value was of that day. And then for the growers that want it, you can also look at the soil moisture data, or this bottom bar could be replaced with fruit sensor data if that was the other sensor, a part of the suite in this block. But it's all here, really easy for you to access on the website. But I also want to check out our app. We as well did a big update to our app over the course of this last year, and it's really become an incredibly powerful tool for a lot of growers. One of the great things about this is it really takes Phytech with you out into the field, or really easy to start with at the beginning of the day. You have right here at the top the daily plant status. So this grower can open up the farm and inside Phytech immediately see exactly how many blocks are in each plant status color. 1 is severe stress, 4 are medium stress, 7 no stress at all. And he can open up his map view below hand to be able to see that. Right below the daily plant status, we have the irrigation amounts, what you can see in terms of daily, weekly, or monthly water that was applied to this entire farm, getting your real quick summaries put together. Then right here, this map view. And what's really exciting about this map view that we brought in now with this new generation of irrigation sensor that can also monitor PSI is we can show you both the stress of the field, but we also can show you the average pressures in the field. So right now, this is just looking at stress, and it's looking at stress for a specific day. We can change the time scale to look at stress for a week or a month, and we can do the same thing with your PSI. We can look at the PSI of today for its irrigation runs, the last week of irrigation, or the last month of irrigation runs. And that gives you an incredibly powerful tool to be able to quickly spot problematic blocks or problematic places where pressure is lower than average or lower than you might want it to be, depending upon the values of your irrigation system. If you actually then click and open up the app or open up the little screen, there's even more information. Again, we have climate data in there, but you don't just have plant status for the day like you do on the homepage. You have the last 5 days of plant status, so you can see where stress has been building as it has in that first block, and where stress is brand new as it is in that second block, as well as access the same irrigation event data that you can on the website. Pretty much everything that you'd want to do inside the website, now you can also do in the palm of your hand with this app. And it's just an incredibly great tool to help growers utilize Phytech even more. Now, also on the website is our planner tool. And this is when I really want to start talking a little bit more about the integration we have with the guys at WiseCon and other leading automation hardware systems. Our planner tool allows you to go in and schedule any sort of horticultural practices. And when you schedule irrigation runs, this then will go over to like drop control and connect. So here you can see a selection of blocks. The little cross hatches are plans, whereas the full bars are the actual event. So you can see sometimes you can hit that plan exactly, but then sometimes maybe you don't hit it exactly, right? And that's fine, you still got the same amount of water applied. We got a great bar over here on the far right where you can actually see what your total plan was for the week versus what your actual applied water was for the week. Up here in the top, though, is this great little button. This is actually where you would log in with an automation system. Right here is where we start that API connection. You can click on it, it would say log in, and then you can begin to build out, or you can log in with your system and then be able to make that connection. So this data then transfers over to your drop control. And over here, it's really easy very quickly to see exactly each of your blocks, what the plan status has been for the week in each of those blocks, what the ET values are for this week, and then quickly figure out how much water you want to apply in terms of inches, in terms of hours, in terms of percent of ET. Now, how you actually do the planning is become so simple and so easy to do. It really is just one little pop-up. You click on any day, any block, and this pop-up appears. You can schedule an irrigation, you can schedule a spray, you can schedule a random horticultural practice with a bunch of different options. What your start time is, your duration, whether or not you're going to apply fertilizer and add a note about that, whether or not this is an event that's going to repeat on a consistent basis. And then we have more tools, just a wealth of them built into this planner to make copy and paste, applying plans to other blocks, editing a plan from last week, but copying it to next week, tons of different tools to really make it a simple system for you to be able to use very quickly to apply plans to ranches and then be able to transfer them to a system like drop control. So you're able to actually have a irrigation schedule that is going to maximize what your trees and your vines really want. Now, we also, in tandem with that, developed a separate app that's really built from the ground up to handle the exact same things that are going on in the planner. So just like on the website version you saw where you can go in and you can schedule irrigation events, you can do all the same things here. You can quickly see how much you've scheduled this week versus what you actually did versus what maybe would be just a reference for that. Clicking on these individual days will quickly take you right to doing the same thing, setting up that same schedule that would sync with both the planner on the website, and then go over to your drop control for approval to actually do the irrigation runs. And then a great share feature, especially over here on the app, for you to then be able to send this plan to anyone who needs it, for them to be able to then report it if you want to print it out, if you want to text it to someone. It's really easy to select the day, select the blocks, and then share the plan with whoever needs to know it. If this is a system that isn't automated, or if it's a system that's automated, then you don't need to share it with anyone because it's already over there on drop control and it's all good. It's really simple to look at this task list from days and then figure out what the details are of your plan. And then also what's important too, what you actually performed, how well was the plan executed. It's nice with a system, an automation system, you're able then to not have to worry about what the details of the daily plan are, because you don't have an irrigator who's controlling your pumps, you have a machine that's controlling your pumps. But for anybody else lacking that, you can really see in here what was the schedule, what was the goal for this week, and how close did we actually get to executing that goal in the same fashion. Now, I wanted to look at a block and see how we've seen in Phytech that increasing irrigation frequency can really have a huge impact on stress. So this is a block. We got that irrigation data there on the top, the trunk diameter, fruit growth, and soil moisture. Now we're gonna kind of cut it in half. Over here on the left side, grower, really not paying attention to Phytech, kind of just irrigating as he's always irrigated. If you've noticed, we got big gaps between irrigation events, 10 days, 7 days, lots of time in between them, and it's producing oranges, as you can see in the plant status above. Over on the right though, big change. He's irrigating on average about every 3 days, sometimes even tighter than that. Over on the left, during that time when irrigation is really separated, 16 days of stress. Over on the right, 0 days of stress. And now let's actually dig into some of the numbers specifically. So we have the plant status color, which is a real at a glance way to know how the tree is feeling. You'd be able to immediately see there's no stress, but what are the actual numbers that are reporting? You can see on the left side, during that same period of time, the fruit only grew about 0.63 millimeters. Over on the right, fruit growth nearly doubles. Now, trunk growth went through an even more dramatic. It more than doubles between the left side of the screen to the right side of the screen. And this is what you have the power to do with an automation system. For growers that lack a system like that, it becomes a once a week, maybe a twice a week if it works out, kind of scheduling system that can lead to these days of stress in between. Being able to tighten up your irrigation system, increase the frequency while reducing the amount of water applied, really gives you the potential to both maximize your fruit growth, your tree growth, while also reducing stress. So you end up in the end of the day, you're actually using, like Daryl talked about, less water, but you're getting either the same or better results because now you're actually providing the tree or the vine with exactly what it needs when it needs it. So now you can take this real-time data with an automation and you can turn it into actions. So beforehand, you had this great data where you can see every day exactly what's happening and where the tree is in terms of stress. But sometimes if you don't have an automation system, it can be hard to immediately turn today's orange or today's red into an irrigation event for whatever reason. But an automation system really gives you the power to take this real-time data and quickly turn it into real-time actions. Now you can see how the trees are feeling and then supply them with water right when they need it. So you're not having to create any sort of delay or providing the trees with water when they're not actually stressed or missing times when they're stressed. You also have someone with us right there to help you. Someone like myself, where we're able to look at the blocks with you, look at the data, and help figure out what is that right schedule. Maybe it is once a week, maybe it's every day, maybe it's multiple times every day. I can't tell you immediately because I don't have the Phytech data, but once we do have that data, we're able to make those really minute decisions that can have really positive long-term effects. And that easy to use planning tool with so many features and functions that really helps you schedule out everything you're doing can transfer directly to drop control. And then quickly, when you see a plan status that's turning red or has a trending in a negative direction, you can go in and make that plan, schedule your irrigation events, and then immediately get things going in the field.
All right, so we did have some questions from the audience. So for the share plan feature, do you need to click share to send it to the WiseCon platform, or how's the approval go about on the share option?
No, actually. The share option is really for, I would say, someone who doesn't have a system of automation like WiseCon. It's there for if you want to WhatsApp or text, whatever, however you would like to send out your plan to your irrigator or whoever's helping you actually turn the pumps on or off. When you are connected with a system like WiseCon, you literally just go in and you make the plan inside the planner, turning on the pumps 6 a.m. Monday morning, 2-hour run, and you make that plan inside Phytech, and it just immediately transfers over. Okay. And like Daryl had shown inside WiseCon, then it will have a request for approval.
Gotcha. And yeah, so on WiseCon's side, when you go into a Gantt chart, just like I showed on the presentation, there's all those bars. There's just a button to the top left corner, just says confirm, and you'll confirm your irrigations from there. It's very simple. You don't really have to go in and look through all these different avenues to get to the solution. So just on Phytech's side, it'd be like pretty much an automatic thing. And then on WiseCon's side, it's just a matter of clicking a button.
Yep.
All right. So I think the first one that I had for you would have been, so from your point of view, do you think the trend has been that the growers move to automation after like having a Phytech system, having the Phytech recommendations, or what's kind of the atmosphere around that that Phytech has kind of been looking at? Have they been just staying with telemetry, or do they growers tend to move forward with it into automation?
Definitely growers are moving towards it into automation. The last example with Mark Sheffrey is a great example of that kind of situation where they're getting this data inside Phytech, or the last example I gave, and you're suddenly able to see really very starkly that when you're putting these big gaps between your irrigation events, because that works for your irrigator or that works for your schedule or whatnot, you're quickly starting to accumulate stress days. And that accumulation of stress days will have a real impact on the health of the tree, the long time production of that tree. Whereas when you're able to tighten up those irrigation sets and really increase the frequency, very quickly you can see a tremendous reduction in stress. You're actually really able to meet the tree's demand right when it needs it. The problem is if you don't have an automation system, tightening up that frequency can be very, very time consuming in terms of labor costs, especially if you have a system where you're having to balance multiple valves or multiple pumps or whatnot. It becomes very costly, it becomes very time consuming. An automation system just makes sense, because all of a sudden then running a set every other day for 3 hours is a no-brainer. It's a piece of cake. Whereas doing an every other day set for 3 hours with someone who has to drive 30 minutes to the site to open up the pump, it's not so easy then.
Gotcha. Yeah, I agree. With growers come to you guys for services or for solutions, what are they mainly looking for? What questions are they wanting answered, I guess? Like, what's the full goal for the telemetry aspect of it?
I guess when a lot of people are coming to us, they're wanting to kind of find out the answer to the question that I was saying so many people have always been guessing on. They're really wanting to know, okay, how are my trees or how are my crops actually feeling? Because we're no longer, like, we're trying to take that guesswork out, where so many guys have, basically just been kind of looking around and then hoping that what they're doing is the right decision. And suddenly now we have data that can show you, hey, actually you have been making the right decision all along. This is a really good irrigation schedule for that block. Or the more difficult conversation where it's like, no, you're actually putting a lot of stress and a lot of pressure that's not necessary. And I think being able to actually have that answer to the question of how is my block feeling and how is it feeling every single day is why people are wanting to come to us.
Gotcha. We did have a question about the irrigation frequency stress example that you gave.
Yes.
They were asking if you also vary the irrigation volume, or is it just the frequency? So are you using the same amount of water, but just spreading more or less of it at a different frequency? Or is it the same volume on the day, but the water on a different frequency of days?
Okay. I would say almost always it's going to be a reduction in volume. From at least my experience in the ag industry, probably the most popular irrigation schedule I come across is the once a week 24 hour or 48-hour irrigation set. I come across that all the time. It's what irrigation districts give you. It's what's easy to do when you turn on the pumps over the weekend. It's an irrigation set that I see all the time. The first thing when someone comes to me and that's how they're irrigating, and they're running 24 hours on Sunday, but then by Friday their blocks are in red. Okay, then they're like, well, what do I do? Well, the first thing I'd say is like, okay, if you want to apply 24 hours of water a week, let's try 2 12-hour sets. Turn it on in the morning, turn it off at night. Let's do it twice a week. Do it on Sunday, do it on Wednesday or Thursday. And you can very quickly start to see a change there. And then I would encourage that grower to continue pushing it. Like, let's not do 12 hours twice a week. Let's do 8 hours 3 times a week, 6 hours 4 times a week, and continuing to kind of push that envelope of frequency. Now, that's not 100% for every single commodity, I would say.
Mm-hmm.
Almonds, for example, just thrive on a very, very consistent schedule, basically almost an everyday schedule. They just do wonderful with that because that's how their root system is designed. Other crops, pistachios immediately leap to mind. They're a hardy crop and they don't have the same root design as an almond. So every day can sometimes be a bit too much for them. You can actually start to cut back on water and do a more frequent schedule, but less frequent and with less volume. So I would definitely not encourage you to go out there and start running your 24-hour set every other day. You're going to quickly run into some problems if you start doing that. What you want to do is you want to both be increasing frequency and reducing the amount of time you run your water or the amount of water you're applying.
Gotcha. Perfect. So as of right now, what's kind of the future looking like for Phytech? What do you guys got in the works, or what's the plan so far for through the season and throughout the future?
I think the future is looking really bright. Our big goal is that we want to continue to provide visibility for growers to be able to actually have knowledge about what is happening in the field and continuing to expand the kind of knowledge we can provide to growers. We think that the foundation of any of that should definitely be the Dendrometer produced plant status, because that really gives you a huge insight into how exactly the trees are feeling in terms of stress. But we're continuing to try to expand, like with the new knowledge about PSI levels inside your fields or in different fields, the fruit sensor data that's giving you information about how the fruit is performing. And we're continuing to do research into other avenues, bricks, soil moisture, continuing to kind of have the goal of giving the grower more visibility, and then not just giving them visibility, because one of our big things is we don't want to just give you a lump of numbers or just a giant sack of data essentially and tell you good luck. We actually want to be there either through interpretation or through assistance. So just like with the plant status color, that dendrometer is recording tons of numbers every single day throughout its data collection. And all those numbers are available to every grower. They can see exactly, highest value today was X, highest value tomorrow is Y, or lowest value yesterday was X, lowest value today is Y. It's all available there, but we're taking that next step and we're helping you interpret that. We're using the plant status algorithm, so you're not in there seeing, well, my MDS today was 200. I mean, like, what does that mean? An MDS of 200 in that crop that day meant orange level stress. And that's a lot easier to react to. And we're wanting to try to take that same visibility increase as well as insight producing to more questions and problems growers are facing.
Gotcha. Yeah, that's awesome. Yeah, great. And yeah, what like you said about, getting these readings that, okay, that's a great reading, but what does electrical conductivity in my soil even mean? Or like, what does
exactly
penetration, like I'm looking at a bunch of lines on a graph, but what does that even mean? That's kind of what sets companies like us apart, to where it's not just, we're going to leave it and let it go. As we bring it to the grower, and you're going to give them some type of interpretation. You're going to tell them what they're looking at.
Absolutely.
Because if you just leave it there, I mean, that's one thing I've noticed in the industry since being involved, is that if you're just going to leave something without telling people what's going on, they're going to think ag tech is just ridiculous and a waste of time. So
absolutely,
I think that's an added
I think that was a problem with ag tech in the past, was too many companies did that to too many growers and kind of gave the industry a bit of a bad name, because they really were just almost collecting data for the sake of collecting data. And that is cool, but it's not actually helpful to farmers who are having to make on-the-ground decisions every single day for this crop that they may not actually see the end goal of for months, And we're trying to be there then and actually helping them utilize that data to make these kinds of important decisions. We'll also still not trying to hide the data from them. We want them to know, hey, there are all these numbers, there are all these graphs, here they are. But if you want to just look at the colors, you're more than welcome to.
Gotcha, exactly. And I think that's a huge trend that's going to be following. And then we got a question about like, what's the trend going to be in ag tech? And I think right now we've got like companies like, you guys, us, who we have all the tools necessary. And over time, we've been kind of perfecting that. And by perfecting it, I mean giving accurate information, like we're talking about the sensors. So being more concise and getting feedback from growers to be, okay, this is nice, but I would like a report like this, or why can't we make it, a little more simplified? So I think the trend is going to be the same types of technologies in the next decade, but also having a better or more concise pathway for the grower to get to the understanding of the data. So making it a lot more simplified and making the data a lot more concise and specific. I think that's definitely going to be a trend. We also got another question for Phytech, was what are your main crops? So what are the main crops that you see that you guys are dealing with the most?
So here in, like you guys, we are an international company. I don't think I talked about that too much, but we are originally from Israel. Global headquarters are still over there. We do the vast majority of our business in Australia and here in the United States. But to talk about what I know the most about, which is here in Central California, our two biggest commodities are definitely almonds and citrus. Those two, both because I think almonds are just becoming one of the dominating crops here in the Valley. Lots of growers are planting them. We're continuing to expand acreage. And at the same time, being able to irrigate almonds efficiently is absolutely critical. So I think that's really created like a perfect storm to increase how many growers are using Phytech on almonds. On the citrus side, one of the big things that's continuing to push that is the fruit size sensor. You being able to track not just the plant status, so the daily feelings of the tree, but also exactly how your fruit is growing. For crop like citrus that is often hanging on the tree from midsummer all the way to late winter, that month-long growing season, you want to actually really be on top of it from the very, very beginning. And using a system like Phytech, where you can both monitor stress levels and how your fruit is growing, has really helped us expand a lot with citrus. That doesn't mean we're not on other crops. I worked with a ton of different nuts, stone fruit, all sorts of things. We're even on row crops as well. So we work on a ton of different crops, but definitely here in Central California, big businesses on almonds and citrus.
Gotcha. And yeah, we did also have another question about where they can get like a WiseCon system, and if they can deal directly with us or if they can deal with the Phytech reps. And right now in the Pacific Northwest, Phytech is actually a distributor for us.
Mm-hmm.
So in the Pacific Northwest, you can contact reps up there. You can get in touch with myself or Joseph after this, and we can definitely get you connected. I know you guys are doing a lot of stuff with apples up there, with overhead cooling and stuff like that. So
apples, stone fruit, cherries, stuff like that. Yeah, I have some great guys working in Washington doing that sort of thing. Yeah.
Perfect. I think the final thing I had was, what's something that you guys have seen through trial and error, you know, that you've had to kind of correct on? So any type of cons that you've kind of assessed and then, you know, made the change and made it, either corrected it or simplified it for the grower.
Within our own system?
Yeah. Is there anything that you can think of that's ever, you know, you've been like, oh, maybe we should change this, or maybe we could do this a little bit better, or that you changed it today?
Yeah, no, the thing that immediately leaps to mind, and I think the reason why I did so excited about it, which maybe someone who had no idea would think it's a little bit silly, is actually our planner tool. So if you were on our planner tool 2 seasons ago, it was a bit clunky. So being able to actually schedule something or quickly be able to move schedules around, copy schedules, was not always the easiest system. It required a bit of dexterous clicking, and also it was hard to adjust after you did that clicking. So it just was not the easiest system for the grower to actually operate. So it was really last fall and winter, the team went back with that piece of software and just did tremendous work to really turn it into something that went from being a bit difficult to use, and I would say not really widely used due to its difficulty, to actually something that is just, it's a literal snap. It's all based around one pop-up. It is incredibly succinct, it's easy to use, and then they built upon that with actually a brand new app that came out last spring that has the same sort of functionality built around the same pop-up. So they really created a cohesive system that was, I think, really both easy to learn and easy to use. And that really connects well with our relationship with you guys, because having a good planning system that then can transfer to an automation system is huge.
Yeah, and the same thing with our app. It got released, you know, if you had our app 2 seasons ago, you know, it wasn't it worked, but it wasn't the most interactive and user-friendly. But like I said, the trend is going to be, we're constantly improving. I mean, same technology,
absolutely,
constantly adding. So now if you forget to start the pump and you're in the truck, you can just click on and your pump starts. Same thing with programs. Now we made it to where you can set your entire program for the week when you wake up in the morning. So it's pretty simplified stuff. Well, great. Yeah, this has been good. I think that's pretty much all the time. We got right up to 1 o'clock. So I'll edit this, I'll send it to you guys, and we'll probably post it on YouTube so everybody can watch the recording if they missed it today.
Yeah, great. Daryl, thank you so much. It was really nice to talk to you today. And thank you to everyone in the audience. Feel free, if you're interested in anything about Phytech, to reach out to me. And if WiseCon, reach out to Daryl. Yeah.
Perfect. All right. Thank you, guys.